Hello, I'm Tiff from Journal with Tiff. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing my pens inked from January. Let's get into it. The first pen is the Esterbrook Estie in Tortoise. When I first inked this pen, I had it in a medium nib. And I have realized that even though it worked fine for me, after a while I realized with the SD nibs, I really prefer the fine nib. So I believe, yeah. So here is the medium nib, and here we have the fine. And I'm going to be honest, just looking at it, it doesn't exactly look a lot different on camera, but when writing with it, it did not put as much ink on the page. So writing with it, with the fine, to me was more comfortable, or I was more comfortable with the fine nib. The comfort level of the pen, I love Esterbrook's. They are so comfortable. I don't get any hand fatigue from it. The ink flow was good. It was slightly dry. To me, a lot of Ferris wheel press inks are kind of dry. And even though I switched to the fine nib, the ink still, it didn't make it any worse to me. It was still just a little bit dry, but I mean, it didn't stop me from using it. I actually did refill it. I would pair that ink with this pen again. Next is the TWSBI Eco in the cream with the rose gold. It's inked with Diamine Dusted Truffle, and I have it in the fine nib. I did realize that for the Ecos, I believe my preference is the extra fine nib. To me, I have a black Eco with the rose gold, and it just glides across the paper. And I just like the feel of it. Plus, I tend to write a little small, so I just like the extra fine better. That's the only Eco that I have, or these are the only two Ecos that I have. So I have nothing else to compare it to. If the extra fine that I have, if that's normal for a TWSBI Eco, or if I just lucked up and got a really, really good one. I did not have to re-ink this because, as we all know, the TWSBIs have huge ink capacity. The fact that I use this much of it, I mean, let's see. Yeah, you can kind of tell it's less than half. It was very comfortable to write with. TWSBIs are just like workhorses, and so as you can see, I did use it a lot. The ink flow was fine. I understand this is a shimmer ink. Anytime I use a shimmer ink, I always feel like, unless it's a really juicy nib, that it doesn't slow. Well, I guess I could say it slows down the ink a little bit. Like I can just feel just the slightest bit of resistance, just a little bit is what I could feel anytime I would agitate it. If I did not agitate it and there was no shimmer coming out, then I feel like it wrote just a little bit smoother. Next, I have Walltown Pen in Augusta Theater. This was a carryover from last month. I have this in an extra fine Yovo nib, and it was inked with Diatramentus Khaki. I love this pen so much. I love this pen so much. One of the things I realized, because I kept thinking, why am I so in love with this pen? And I believe not only is it just the beautiful colorway, the colors it's just me. Browns, I see black, I see khaki, I see cream, I see like a bit of like an olive, muted green. It's just like all of the colors that I love in one pen. And then the amber finials just really set it off. But other than that, I was trying to figure out what I really, really love about this pen, because the nib, there was nothing wrong with it. It's an extra fine, of course, like more of a Western extra fine. But it wrote great, especially with this ink. I absolutely would pair it again in this pen. But I think it's the grip section. There's the slightest step down. Let's see if, there we go. But I really couldn't feel it. And the actual grip section was long, and it's long enough that my fingers don't touch here. They do not touch there. I don't know why I won't. There we go. So I think it's the fact that the grip section is long enough that it makes it so comfortable for me. So aside from just the beauty of this pen, it's just really comfortable for me to hold. Platinum Century 3776, and this is in the tortoise. I have this in a fine nib. And surprisingly, I reached for this pen a lot. I wrote it dry. I didn't refill it, but actually, did I? I think I did refill it. I didn't fill it completely. I just added just a little bit more to the converter. But it writes so well. Now, this is a very stiff nib, but it just wrote so well. I had it inked with Oyster's Brown Penguin, and that ink is just a little bit dry. And I noticed that this kept clogging. I didn't, I was like, okay, what's going on? But it kept clogging, and I didn't know if it was the ink, because once I would I would flush it and re-ink it, it was fine. And then I think 2 or 3 days went by, it was tightly capped and it would clog again. So I've never had that issue with this pen. So my only assumption is that it was the ink. When it wasn't dry, it wrote so beautifully, and I found myself reaching for this a lot. So I would pair them together again. Also, I run a ceiling fan in almost every room, like all the time. And I had my pens just in the pen holder here. And it kind of made me wonder if the cap wasn't on really good, because I had the same issue with another one. And maybe air was getting to it more than I thought. But other than that, once I re-inked it, I mean, it was great and it wrote fine. And this is just the depth of the colors of this particular pen versus the Esterbrook. The Esterbrook just is the color is just a little bit more washed out. So, I mean, while I like it, I really like it, I love the celluloid so much better. The Pilot Custom 823. So, okay, I had some concerns with this pen. Okay, not the pen, I don't think. Because my very first custom 823 was in the smoke, and then I got this demonstrator, and it kind of kept clogging as well. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe it is just that it's just dry air in here and it's not being closed good. Initially, I had this ink, and I actually wrote it down wrong, but initially this was inked with Venta. I had this initially inked with my Venta Ochre 1797, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Because it would skip. When I would go to write with it after a while, like the first day or so, it was fine. But then it would start to skip, and I would open it up and it would be okay for a second, and then it would start skipping again. I was very, very concerned about it. And so what I did was I cleaned the pen out and replaced it with an Iroshizuku ink. So I have replaced it with Sakushi, one of my favorites, and no problem. So that's why I feel like it was the ink. So the comfort level for this pen, one of the things that I have learned is that I like, just like with the Walltown pen, I think I just like longer grip sections. And I think I'm kind of starting to lean towards girthier pens as well. But this is still a very comfortable pen to hold. It's not super skinny. It's not super slim. It works great for me. It's not like I'm going to stop using it. I love, love, love the nib. It is so smooth. It's like right on the verge of smoothness for me, because a pen, if a nib is like too smooth. I don't know if this sounds crazy or not, but if it's too smooth, then it's almost like I lose control. And you can see it in my writing. Like I cannot form my letters the exact way I want to, because I'm a little bit anal. I write much neater when I'm journaling because I'm going to take my time with it. But yeah, so this is like, if there's a nib out there that's more buttery smooth than the custom 823, than these pilot nibs, it's probably not going to work for me. But this one worked great. And of course, I would pair this again. Now for my Edison Pen Co. This is in the Brooks Elvenwood color. Ooh, I love this pen. And I say it every time I pull it out. I have it in a fine nib. It is inked with Monteverde Scotch Brown. For a fine, this is already a fairly wet nib, and the Monteverde paired with it so well. The shading was so good. Because it wrote fairly wet, I could just really appreciate the shading with the Monteverde ink. If you can notice right there, this is where I'm keeping my notes. And that I can refer back to if I ever want to look at how these pairings went. But yeah, the comfort level was good. I think the only complaint I have about this pen is that when I go to post the cap, I have to put it on and kind of twist a little bit, and then it's the perfect size. Without posting the cap, it's pretty short. It's like too short. Once it's posted, it's fine. If I just put it on that way, when I go to write, it tends to pop off. So I don't know if that's just me, if it's this pen. It's tapered like it's meant to be posted, but it doesn't really matter. I put it on, kind of twist a little bit. I've never scratched the resin at all. So yeah, the pen wrote beautifully. The ink worked so well with it. And even though it's a fine, with it being wet, really turns it into, with it being such a wet nib, it really turns it into more like a medium, because it puts so much ink on the paper. I do write a little small, so I did have to be careful with that, but I still would pair it again because it was a great color pairing and it didn't dry out. There was no skipping, and it was just a really, really good writing experience. And lastly, the Pelikan M800 in brown black. I have an extra fine nib here, and I honestly don't know how they can call this an extra fine. There's nothing extra fine about this nib. It really was just as wet of a flow and looked just like the Edison Pen code that I just showed. On paper, it looked the same, and that was supposed to have been a wet fine, and this is supposed to be an extra fine. So yeah, but other than that, this pen wrote so well. Again, I do like the grip section. I wish it was a little bit longer, because I can feel this part right here. I can feel that, but it's not irritating. I mean, I was able to write, and when I say a long writing sessions, I mean in a A5 notebook, 2 pages, meaning left and right side or front and back. Rarely will I ever write more than that in one sitting. So to me, that's a long writing session. But other than that, this is just, I love the size of this pen. Again, I really think I'm moving away from these slimmer pens. I don't have a lot that I'm going to be getting rid of, but number one, this is just a beautiful pen to look at. It's a beautiful pen to hold. It sits perfectly. I don't have to cap it, post it. So yeah, I definitely would. Oh, and I forgot, this is inked with Ferris Wheel Press Steeped Umber. And generally speaking, again, I feel like Ferris Wheel Press inks are fairly dry, but this one was not. I did not feel like it was dry at all. It had great shading, and it just worked really, really well. I kept reaching for it. I love this pairing. And that is my review for January. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.